Ha ha ha. Elon Musk. You silly, silly boy. I'm just kidding. You're not that silly. Honestly, the way that you approached your argument and the way that you continue to approach it, it's not the type of argument that you really feel compelled to argue with, because you're very up in the air with it. You're not even really trying to dictate that this reality is a simulation. But let's approach it as if you are, because I'm watching a video, "Are we in a simulation?" question mark, Elon Musk. And you just asked what were the flaws in that argument. I'm aware that currently you may have a different view, but I just saw on Twitter today that you posted more proof that we're in a simulation. So I'm just going to go ahead and believe that you still think this is a simulation. Now, here are some reasons why this reality is currently not a simulation. Now, there's a lot of reasons I could pose as to why we're in a simulation, but that's not what I'm about to do. First of all, in the video I brought up, you said that we went from a very kind of lame and like an unadvanced games to now like HD resolution and games running at such high specs, and like just you can see that the quality of the graphics is at least improving. But we're not talking about improvements in graphics or the speed at which you can play like in FPSs, like frames per second. I don't really know that much about how it works, but you can blatantly tell that it's not at near the point where it's indistinguishable from reality. I think you really overestimated where we currently are. I think that you may be compelled to believe that it's become so much better, but there's a lot of places where now that we've gotten better, it just seems even harder for it to get to the point where it's indistinguishable from reality, because we're running into problems that we can't solve. For example, Apex Legends. Literally, Apex Legends. You posted a tweet something about what's a game you've been enjoying for the past 2 years. Apex Legends is a game that I have not been enjoying for the past 2 years. But here's why. The servers. Like, I've never run into a game in which you ran into more problems. Like, the old-timey games, like the 90s and the 80s consoles, the early 2000s consoles. The amount of server issues and problems that you ran into was almost nothing. So I'm just wondering, like, what's causing all these issues in the current technology. Like, how come all these patches and all these fixes are literally not working? It's as if the game has a mind of its own and it just keeps breaking. You see, I feel as if the coding to create a game that's that smooth that it would be indistinguishable from reality is not something that we could ever create. I feel as if it were a simulation, we would be they would make it so that you're incapable of creating a simulation inside of the simulation, because it ruins a simulation if you think that you're in a simulation. And if you were designing a simulation, then why would you want what's being simulated to be simulatable? I don't know. I think you can understand my train of thought in the fact that the criteria for this being a simulation is that we can create something, a game or an experience, like maybe a video or something that is indistinguishable from reality. Now, indistinguishable is a big part of that, and we're just running into more and more and more problems as the technology advances. In the past, you would server issues. Was that even a thing? Like when I was playing Modern Warfare and when I was playing Halo, to like the server issues were like hardly a problem. It was really just your Wi-Fi connection that was causing a problem. But now it's genuinely problems in the servers. So I would say that this, if it were a simulation, it's too perfect for us to even be able to recreate. I think that if we attempted to prove that it wasn't a simulation, that means that it's not a simulation. I don't know, because if it's a simulation, it's indistinguishable from reality, and therefore the idea that simulations are a thing wouldn't really exist. Or maybe something's wrong with that argument. And sure, we may be going towards a point to where we overcome the current obstacles in gaming, and we can create a very realistic experience that's smooth, where you don't run into any errors with servers. Like, there's so many different types of server errors, it's ridiculous. I don't understand. And then just like, sometimes it's not with the servers, it's bugs and glitches inside of the game. It's like they fixed it 3 seasons ago. It worked for 1 season perfectly fine. Then it comes back, they fix it. It breaks again when you release the new season, and it's been broken ever since. Honestly, the amount of like issues is just ridiculous. So for you to say we're going in a route that's indistinguishable from reality, it kind of is I feel like it's a disingenuous argument, because as far as I'm concerned, there's no glitches in the simulation. There's no glitches that we're experiencing. Now, like I said, it's no fun to argue. Like you said to Joe Rogan something along the lines of, "I'd rather be wrong and optimistic than be pessimistic and be right." But honestly, it doesn't have to be like that. That's just like a human outlook on it. I feel as if it's fun to take both sides. I think you definitely see that. But I feel like the sides that are leaning towards the simulation, they're very hypothetical and they aren't based. I think that it's hard to really argue that this is a simulation. Maybe I will try to give you one of my points for why this world is a simulation. Wadi wadi. So I think that this could be a simulation without having to be indistinguishable from reality. Honestly, that's criteria that you imposed, I think, in the sense of trying to logically argue that we're in a simulation. But what if there's actual proof or evidence out there in this reality that we are in a simulation? I think things like the fact that they say consciousness is non-computational, and that they say that the world is built up by numbers. There's such silly things to say, but they definitely go to show that there's something in humans, in human consciousness, that is, it has a really like, it's so attached to the idea of time and repetition and like just monotony, like things going on like just this linear path. That's how we view ourselves, in a sense. Maybe it's because we understand that we're mortal, but I feel as if the idea that there's a fourth dimension, I think that goes to show that that's like physical proof that we may be in a simulation. And it doesn't even have to be a simulation in the sense that we are being observed by someone that created a simulation. It could be that we made a simulation for ourselves, and it could be that we're a simulation inside of another simulation. So I don't know. It's easier to argue if you take away the criteria of being indistinguishable from reality, because you said something along the lines of there's a sediment that everything is running on. But what compels you to believe that? I mean, you don't really have to believe believe that. That's just a take. That's just an outlook. But what if everything? What if it's just free in the air, and there is no sediment that we're running on? What if there are no special effects, and it's all exactly as it is? You see, one of the problems with theories on physics is that we have no way to like confirm a lot of these thought experiments, because at the end of the day it's all theories. So it's really hard to actually come up with a solid law, a solid natural law. You have to actually have like physical proof. And so a lot of the time these ideas are based on hypotheticals, or they're just like theoretical. I think you understand that. And so when you approach without having the solid knowledge, like, we observe how gravity works, and so we can do calculations on gravity, and we can observe how gravity may be different for different objects in space. So gravity is something that we abide by as a natural law. But something like this, there's no way to really test the binds of your reality. Like, no matter how much we continue like creating nanotechnology, or like neurotechnology, in the sense that we're creating robots that have brains, or machines that have brains. um I don't know if that, just because you create a physical vessel to hold a consciousness, doesn't mean that it can necessarily hold a consciousness. And I feel as if you if you go down that road, then that might be where the answer lies to whether this is a simulation or not. Because if you can transfer your consciousness into a simulation, then this is most likely a simulation. But then that goes to, it takes you to a point where you're like, none of this is actually physical. Like, it's not actually real. It only feels like it's real. And that's a weird place to be. You don't want to take your mind there. That's not something for humans to ponder. Joe said in a different podcast, it wasn't the one with you, Elon, but he said something about humans aren't capable of computing. We can't, like, we can't understand certain things. Some things are unfathomable, and that's what the word unfathomable comes from. And I feel like the ideas that you're trying to discuss, some of them are going to bring you to these places where you're not going to have any way to prove it or not. And so you're just kind of not, you're just pondering reality, and there's no problem with that at all. But to say that this world is a simulation, or that there's proof that this is a simulation, I feel like that's kind of false, because we haven't even created any simulations that don't have issues. Like, think about this. What if someone abruptly stops your Neuralink or your VR? Like, it's explored in Sword Art Online. They get trapped in the simulation, but if someone on the outside abruptly stops you, then you die in game and in reality. Now think about that in terms of like an Oculus Rift. Like, if someone's that entranced and it's really indistinguishable from reality, then they would die. They would literally die. Like, their body would kill them. Some people, when they're falling from a plane or falling from a high place, they die before they hit the ground because they went into shock. They had a heart attack. They died in the air before they hit the ground because they knew, like, the fear of them dying killed them. And so if you're in a VR headset and it's that indistinguishable from reality, and you are abruptly pulled out, I'm not saying that it's going to kill you, but I think the risk of you going brain dead, and I think the risk of you being like discombobulated for a couple of minutes or hours or even days, I feel like that's definitely a possibility. And especially because psychedelics, like, they're capable of literally changing, like your makeup. They're literally capable of making you perceive things differently after going on a trip. And I just feel like uh, it's hard to talk about this type of stuff. I don't know. I don't think that this is a simulation. I think that we're based in reality. Um, because we're doing so much, like, pondering the ideas of a simulation. That's what compels me to believe that it's not a simulation. I feel as if it was a simulation, it would be clear cut, because every simulation that we've created is capable of having some type of bug or some type of issue. And you would think that it's true what you said, we're getting more advanced merely because our graphics are getting better or because we're running smoother. But in truth, the connectivity issues, I feel like they're going up the more that we explore online gaming and having servers in different regions and not being on LAN. I think that that's the reason why we're not in a simulation, just because we're observing too many glitches in our own simulations. Maybe that's the simulation's way of keeping you from thinking that you're in a simulation. That's funny, but it doesn't really matter. We could be in one, we couldn't be in one. A couple of days ago, I had this thought. I was like, if I found out what God was, like, I'm still just an ape on a rock in some void. Like, what? It doesn't do anything to know what binds the universe. All of these things that we ponder. If I found out what God was and I had went to go spread my truth, no, the likelihood of everyone believing me and submitting to God's authority is like is so far fetched. So I don't know. This video's gone on. I only have like 4 minutes left in the memory, the storage. That's the one thing that I was also thinking about, and reasons why this isn't a simulation. Because look at your brain. You you have a experience and you want to remember it. You're trying to remember it. You can always remember it. It's like your brain stores these memories, and sometimes you can't remember something, but then, like, you remember it and it's like so profound to you and you're like, "Oh, I remember that." Um your storage, the storage space. When we create artificial storages, it can only be as big as the technology allows it. You can have a tiny little chip and it can have more storage than a big chip. I don't know. A lot of the time we look into reality and we say that we can tell what it's derived of, but that's not the way that we're actually seeing it. You see, say that you are sitting right here and you're observing something right here. You're observing it from right here, but there's still so much more space that you could observe it from. And so you're seeing what this is like from here, but you're not seeing what this is like from everywhere else. I don't know, hard to get with how, like, with how much there's a connection between the simulation discussion and the artificial intelligence discussion, like you said, it's so. I think that kind of provides you with enough evidence to, if not say that we aren't in a simulation, to at least say that you'll never be able to tell. I don't know. What do you think, Elon? I know this was a doozy. What do you think, everyone else? Because Elon's probably not going to watch this. And if he does, then Elon, let me talk to the AI. I'm going to break it.